All right, ready? Go.
Hi, I'm Lucy. Welcome to Lemon Blossom's Farm.
So, you've gotten chickens, or you're looking at getting chickens, and you go to your local feed store. That might be a local feed and seed, or a Tractor Supply, or something like that, and you're there to check out what kind of feed you're going to be giving your chickens. Now, you walk down the aisle and you start getting overwhelmed, and it's understandable because there are tons of different kinds of chicken feed out there. There's broiler, there's layer, there's starter, there's game birds, there's medicated, there's unmedicated, there's pellets, there's crumbles. Then you start seeing the percentages. There's 16%, there's 22%, there's 30%, and you start getting overwhelmed trying to figure out what are you going to get your backyard layer chickens that you just picked up or that you're looking at picking up soon. So we are going to start going over each one of those step by step so you can have an understanding of what kind of feed your chickens need and why you need to give your chickens that particular type of feed. This particular video, we're going to focus on layer feed, and that is for mature layer birds, typically at least 16 to 18 weeks of age, who are in egg production time period. This is going to cover what most people have in their backyard. I'm going to hit on some things like starter feed, game bird feed, and broiler feed for some very basic information, but we're going to save that video for those particular types of birds. This one, the focus is going to be layer birds in production years. So let's start with the two main types of feed. We have processed feed and we have unprocessed feed. Now the two are different in obviously how they're made. One is processed and one's unprocessed. You walk into a Tractor Supply or a feed and seed, the first thing you're probably going to see in a store like that will be processed feed. And so we're going to dive into processed feed first, just because that's the most common for what you'll see. First up, we're going to talk about is pellets. Looks just like this right here. These are exactly what they say they are. They're pellets. They're a pelletized form of chicken feed. They take the feed, they process the feed, they mash it up, mix the ingredients together, they pack everything together and heat it up, and then it comes out as these tubular style pellets. Then they break these pellets up until they're little bite-sized pieces for the chickens, and that leaves you with pellet feed. Pellet feed's incredibly common because it's shelf stable. Typically has a preservative or preservatives in it to maintain a longer shelf life. Usually when maintained in a cool and dry climate, pellets can be good for up to 9 months, sometimes more. They are very popular amongst feed stores and very popular for farmers and chicken people because it's an easy feed. There's very low waste with that. Chickens tend to identify it very easy and can consume the entire pellet, and it's easy to just maintain and keep up with. Next is crumble. Crumble is, again, just like it sounds. It is crumbled up pieces of feed. Usually comes from the pellets that we just talked about. They take those pellets, they mash them and crush them until you get a crumble-like feed. Very similar to pellets in its manufacturing. Crumble is good for 6 to 9 months as well. And it's, again, very common at feed stores, and it's a product that's easily accessible and that you'll find just about anywhere. For unprocessed feed, we have two different types of unprocessed feed. We have whole grain, and then we have mash. Very similar to pellets and crumble. We're going to start out with whole grain. Whole grain is exactly that. It is the entire grain. It's the entire corn, usually cracked into edible smaller pieces, but it's the entire corn piece. It's minimally crushed or cut oats, barley, wheat. They put different seeds in there like sunflower and stuff like that. They also put proteins in there. Usually comes from peas or soybeans and stuff like that to increase the protein. And you'll see those larger whole pieces inside of the whole grain feed. It's easy to identify that. It's the freshest mix you can get because it's literally the whole ingredient right there that the bird's eating. Your whole feed typically has the texture or consistency of something like granola, So like I said, anytime you're looking at those whole large pieces, you'll notice that that is the feed that you'll notice that you're feeding that whole grain because you see those large whole pieces in there. Last up on our feed list is mash. This is mash, and as you can tell, it's a finer consistency for that. It's literally just the whole grain, like we were just talking about, the whole grain feed, but it's been mashed up, cut or crushed into a very fine powdery texture, almost like potting soil, you could say. You won't be able to identify much in here. I can see a couple of the corn pieces, maybe a couple of peas or soybeans and stuff like that. But for the most part, this is very, very finely processed feed. And this feed right here is a little bit harder to find. And that's because it's whole grain, but it's been crushed down. So when I say it's been processed in the fact that it's had something done to it physically, not processed as in heat treated, chemically altered, or anything like that. But mash is also used for fermenting. If you ever want to give your chicks fermented feed, you can take this, and we'll do a video on that later. But basically you mix this with water, let it sit for a time period, and then feed that to your chickens. Mash is good because it's the highest bioavailability for feed out there because it's already been slightly processed, so the chicken doesn't have to go through as much work to get the nutrients out of that food. Now, when we talk about our unprocessed food, we're talking about a shorter shelf life. Your whole grains, when kept cool and dry, are good for around 6 months, and mash, when kept cool and dry, is usually good for around 3 months. Past that, your unprocessed grains will start to what's called sour. They'll begin to ferment, they'll begin to accumulate moisture, and they will go rancid. You'll notice the smell. You'll notice the mold or a mildew like growing on them as well. So they do have a shorter shelf life. That's why you hardly ever see these types of feeds at feed stores. Occasionally you might see some whole grain, occasionally, but usually not. Usually it's a processed feed of pellets or crumbles. Now, coming up, how do you feed your chickens? Now, feeding chickens can occur a couple different ways. Some people are real basic. They literally scoop up the feed and just dump it out there on the ground for the chickens to have. Chickens don't really care. The dirt does not bother them. So a lot of people that are freaking out about the chickens are going through the dirt, that's what they're doing when they're out in the run anyways, or they're out in your yard, they are literally digging through the dirt. So not a big deal. If you want to maintain a little bit of a cleaner coop or something like that though, you can put your food in feeders. We were very fortunate recently because the company Roosty's reached out to us. Roosty's makes chicken feeders and chicken products such as egg layer mats, and they sent us a feeder, a waterer, and some chicken layer mats that we are currently using in our feeder. They sent us to these for review, and I can say I have truly enjoyed using these. Our chickens really do like them. This is their waterer. One thing I do like about this is it can grow with the chickens. So you can start out with your chicks and this being straight in there with them. It's not too deep and it's not a large area, so I don't have to worry about the chickens potentially drowning. And then as they grow, I can flip these feet down and that puts it up off the ground a little bit more and keeps this from getting dirty. I always find myself putting boards and stuff like that or blocks under my feeder and my water, and I really like this with the water because it sets it up on there. It's also easy to clean. It's just twist and it comes off. It's got the locking system in there. Easy to clean out the inside, easy to clean the base. I fill this up, put the lid back on, lock it back in place. You can hear the solid lock and flip it over. The little drain hole down here lets enough water out to keep in the dish. And it also, if I need to, has a hanging hook up here where I can hang this in the feeder if I want to keep this off the ground. The feeder itself is out in our coop right now with our younger girls. I say younger, they're about 18 weeks now, so they are laying. But I wanted to give it out there and give them a test through it to see how they liked it. And so far, they are thoroughly enjoying it. I'm gonna throw in some content, probably right now when I'm talking, so you can see them digging into the Roosty feeder that we were sent, and I liked it a lot. The food stayed in there real well, keeping it from getting out and flying everywhere. These are also real well made. So they're very durable. I like that the plastic on them is not brittle, and everything seems very solid made. You can see there's some supports and everything in here for this. Same with the feet. They're a laying mat. I currently have 2 of these in our coop with our layers. I like this. It's a plastic-like material that has little fringes up here to replicate kind of like a grass-like material or hay. It's perforated and it feels good. It's not pokey at all. I've seen my girls sitting on these. They lay their eggs. It keeps it off the floor of my coop, of the laying boxes, so the eggs stay cleaner. It's also real easy to maintain. I just take this out, take it over a water hose, rinse it off, shake it out to dry it. It dries real quick, and then I put it back down. Chickens are ready to lay on it again in case they do decide to put some of their waste on here. So again, excellent product. I really like this. So far, they're durable. They've held up, and the chickens have had no issues laying on it. It's very comfortable for them, it seems. So props to Roosties. I'm going to throw a link down below for you guys to check them out if you are interested in getting some of these products. Their feeders, their laying mats, and their waters are all stuff that I honestly can recommend because our girls really do enjoy it. I appreciate Roosties for sending this to us to try out, and I look forward to checking out some more of you guys' stuff in the future. Now let's talk about supplements for chickens. We typically don't supplement our chicken with too much stuff, but there are a couple things that we do tend to give them. Starting out, we've done the Poultry Booster. This particular one is from Rooster. We just found this at our local Tractor Supply. We are not sponsored by them. This is something we bought, so we use this. And our chickens seem to like it. It's a little crumble style form. You just take this and top dress their feed with it, just a little bit for the ingredients in the back. And what it does is just gives them some extra minerals, some extra vitamins and supplements, so that if chickens are struggling a little bit, like when it's really hot outside, or we have younger chicks who are learning to acclimate to different weather and conditions, we'll give them a little bit of this. You can also give them the supplements in their water too, electrolytes. We'll add a pack of that into, I think it's a gallon of water. Follow the directions on the label, but that can give them a little extra bump up if needed. If you notice your chickens are struggling a little bit, especially if they're young chicks, or like us down here in the South, we've had very high temperatures this past week. Regular base temperatures, 97, 98 degrees, with heat indexes well into the hundreds, approaching 110, 112. So our girls are drinking plenty of water, and if we ever notice any of them struggling, we will throw in some electrolytes into their water. Next up for us, for supplements for our chicken, is oyster shells. These are crushed shells from oysters. What we do is we give them free access to this right here. This allows our chickens to consume them as they feel they need or they want to. And oyster shells help boost the calcium for the chicken's shells. If you notice your chicken shells are getting thin, their egg shells are getting thin, and they're not very durable. They're breaking easily. Usually a calcium problem, and you can usually easily remedy that pretty quickly by giving them free access to oyster shells, and then possibly following up looking at changing their feed to something that's a little bit higher calcium. Next up for supplements is grit. This is a very fine grit. This is a chick grit used for smaller chicks, usually less than 8 weeks old. All it is stone. I think this is like granite or something. I'm not sure. I'm not very good with stones and rocks. But this is a finer ground stone, finer crushed stone. Chickens consume this. It helps them process their food. So their digestion tract's a little bit different than humans. They need a supplement to help with that. So we give our birds free access to grit. That helps them process with gizzard and stuff like that. I'm not a chicken digestion person. I just take them out when we process our broilers. But grit in there for the gizzard, and I believe the crop helps them process as well. So free access to oyster shells, free access to grit are important things. All right, last thing we're gonna cover in supplements is essentially chicken treats. This is what we call scratch. This right here you can see is a combination of different types of grains. Corn, cracked corn, barley, oats, maybe some sunflower seeds mixed in, depends on what kind of scratch you get. But scratch is a treat that you give chickens. It is not a sole food that you give chickens because it lacks protein content. For scratch, we go out and we have 19 chickens in our flock now, and we will give them just a couple handfuls. Shouldn't exceed any more than 10% of their daily diet for regular food. So it is kind of a treat. Usually we use scratch to train our chickens to come to us. So whenever we let them out, we'll grab some scratch and shake the cup, and that gets them back in with us. So we talked about layer feed and supplements for layer birds. Touch briefly on starter chicks and broilers. So this is a starter grower feed. As we notice on the bottom, this is unmedicated. This is a Purina. Found this at a local Tractor Supply. Again, not sponsored. We bought this. We don't really use it because we don't have chicks right now. All of our girls are grown. But this is a starter grower blend. Usually has slightly higher protein content. If you get medicated, it comes with medication to help birds not get sick. I believe it's coccidosis or something like that. We buy our birds usually treated for that. But there's medicated and unmedicated. Leave it up to you as to what you do. I think we've used both in the past. We usually take pretty good care of our birds and give them a pretty stable environment so we don't have to worry about medicated too much because our birds usually don't look too sick. But again, if you ever find out that you need it, starter feed is medicated, unmedicated, and it's going to be in crumble form. You can also give them in mash form as well. Mash is good because it's easy for them to consume, but pellets and stuff like that are not good for starting chicks because they're not going to be able to eat, process that. It's too big for them. Now, you're going through the store and you're looking at different types of protein. There's kind of overwhelming with that too. Usually you'll see a variety of anywhere from 16% all the way up to 30%. For layer chickens who are actively laying eggs, 16% layer feed is usually what you're going for. You can find that in pellets, mash, crumble, and whole grain. That is pretty standard for laying age chickens, 16%. For starters, that number can go up. So if you're starting out chicks, you'll see starter blends sometimes 18 or 20 or even 22%. For broilers, if you're raising meat birds, Cornish crosses, Freedom Rangers, stuff like that, you want to aim for a higher protein content. Usually they're starting out at 24, 22%, and then once they get to a nearing maturing age of 6 weeks, 5 weeks or so, we cut ours down to a 16 to 18% blend, and that's what our girls chow down with for broilers until we process them at 8 weeks of age. Lastly is game bird feed. So you have game birds, which we don't have any. I've never raised any, so I'm not intricately familiar with them, but I do know that their protein content is much higher, typically 30%. So if you're raising game birds or you have game birds, that 30% number is what you're looking at because they do need a higher protein content. One thing I will add, in addition to feed, is make sure that your chickens always have availability of fresh water. No matter what kind of feed you give your chickens, no matter how much or how little, none of it's really going to matter if they're not getting adequate hydration to go with it. You can feed your chickens the best feed in the entire world. If they don't get good, clean water, they are going to suffer, and you're going to see egg production suffer as well. How much do you feed your chickens? Now, quantity plays a factor in egg production. Again, we're focusing on egg production for your layer chickens here. So quantity is going to play a factor. What we typically do is we free range our birds for whatever feed they want. Our layers are pets. They are not purpose-focused animals like our broilers are. So we kind of give them a little more lap of luxury. So that gives them a little more wide open access to feed. If you are more concerned about conserving feed, what you can do is give your birds free access to feed for a couple of weeks. Make sure they're of laying age and it's spring, summertime where they're getting into full production, and give them free access to feed. And then what you can do is start tapering back. So if you notice they're consuming a couple cups, depending on how many birds you have, a few cups, maybe a gallon or something like that, start out with that and then start tapering that back. And when you start to see, and only do it for a few days so you can get a good average number. So if you start out with like a gallon of feed for your birds, next day cut it back, half a cup or something like that, and do that for a few days. Watch their egg production. Next day, come in, cut it back another half a cup. Watch their egg production. When you start seeing their egg production decline, so let's say you get an average of an egg a day, and then they start doing maybe 5 eggs a week. So an egg every few days, or an egg almost every day, but not quite. That number is that number where you want to stick to feeding your birds, because that's your ideal production. Anything over that, chickens aren't really benefiting with feed-wise. Anything less than that, you're suffering in egg production. Again, we just free range ours, we just free feed ours. We have a 30-pound feeder that they just chow on whenever they would like. What is the best chicken feed to give your backyard flock? In our opinion, it's going to be the mash. We love the mash for our birds. Our birds love the mash. They eat it up almost excessively sometimes, but again, that's okay. Our layer birds get spoiled a little bit. We also use mash for our broilers when we raise batches of broilers. Again, the bioavailability in mash feed is higher than what you'll get in anything else. It can be a little bit harder to get. We get ours from a local farm that's about 2 hours away. They do a great blend, 16% for our layers. For broilers, they do a 16% finisher, which some people say is really low. I don't really worry about that, because last time we harvested ours, we were at 8 weeks, we were harvesting Cornish crosses at 6 pounds freezer weight. So when we processed our birds and they were going into the freezer, we had numerous birds at 6 pounds off of a 16% broiler feed. So it does very good. But for layers, we haven't tried fermenting yet. That's on our list to do, but fermenting mash feed increases bioavailability even more. So that's why we're probably gonna look at doing that too. I highly recommend that you try to find something local. While the feed stores are great, we really try to focus on a local farm. Our mash blend comes from a local farm that's close to us. They are great for it. If you are ever interested in creating your own custom blends, let's say you want more vitamins or minerals, or you want more protein or less protein, or more soybean, or you don't want to use peas, or whatever it is, a lot of your local farms that make their feed can custom blend that for you. You may have to purchase a certain amount of it, a couple thousand pounds usually. That's not uncommon. But that's how we get our feed. We get our feed 2,000 pounds at a time. Comes in 50-pound bags, and our girls go to town. We store ours in a garage. We have large blue trash cans. We put a lid on it, and the feed bags go in there. And our feed stays good until we go to get another run, which I usually do about once a month. So what kind of feed do your birds like? What have you tried them out on? What have you found they like? What have you found they don't like? Let us know down in the comment section below. Give us some feedback on this video. Did you find anything useful in this? Our last chicken video for what type of backyard broilers seem to be doing really good, and I really appreciate everyone's feedback. It really helps us make content that you guys are interested in. Don't forget, like, subscribe. Thank you for watching this video. From the bottom of our hearts, we really are appreciative of everyone that joins in. I'm sorry we're inside today. We are literally going through an afternoon thunderstorm. For summer for us, it's very common in the afternoon, and it's literally been a close monsoon outside. So today's video was inside, was not out near the chickens, but I'm gonna throw in some chicken feed eating videos, clips in there so you guys can enjoy that. But again, thank you for tuning in, and We'll see everybody on the next video. Bye now.